Everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. My name is Kiara Miller-Dew. I'm the president of the N.A.H.S.E Houston chapter. And welcome and thank you for joining our professional development webinar, the first one of the year, Impactful Interviewing with Natasha Wade. So briefly, I'll just tell you a little bit about our chapter. So the Houston chapter of N.A.H.S.E, which is a National Association of Health Services Executives, we're a nonprofit association of Black healthcare leaders. We were founded in 1968. Our purpose is to promote the advancement and development of Black healthcare leaders, elevating the quality of healthcare services rendered to our minority and underserved communities. And our purpose is to ensure the greater participation of minority groups in the healthcare field. Our objective is to have a strong, viable body to more effectively input into the national healthcare delivery system, and also to provide a vehicle for Blacks to participate in the design, direction, and delivery of quality healthcare to all people. So with that being said, welcome again to our first professional development event of the year with Natasha Wade, Impactful Interviewing, and I'll let her take it away.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And then when I do, y'all can tell me if you see what I'm seeing. Y'all see my screen?
Got it. Yes.
All righty. And shout out to Keela Zell. See, that's what a real best friend does. She just shows up to your stuff, no matter what time it is, no matter how tired she is. Hi, Keela. All right. So without further ado, we're going to talk about impactful interviewing and the power of storytelling. And first, let me applaud all of you for showing up. 25 of y'all in here. I'm pretty sure some of you have had a hectic Monday and you'd rather be eating dinner, going to bed, or doing something else, right? But you are here with us, and I am so excited to spend our time together. So some of you might be wondering, who is Natasha and why does it behoove us to listen to her? So let me introduce myself. I am Natasha Wade. I am the founder and CEO of Natasha Wade, your Black Women's Soul Coach, where we help Black women achieve their deepest soul desires in life, love, work, and play. Now, no worries. I'm actually here for everybody. Everybody's going to catch these interview tips because I also have 10 plus years of recruiting and coaching top healthcare leaders. That includes underrepresented leaders, and that also is especially true of Black healthcare leaders across all job levels. My pronouns are she, her, and Aya. And then for those of you who cannot see my visual or my video image clearly, I am a light-skinned Black woman, red glasses, my favorite red glasses. I have long Black locks past my shoulders. I have on a Black blazer covering one of my favorite Black t-shirts that says gifted with red and white interlocking letters. And I also have on a pair of my favorite Black leggings, which you cannot see, but trust, they are there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the learning journey we're going to take today. We are going to talk about impactful interviewing as promised, but we're going to talk about it within the context of storytelling, right? And not only because storytelling is an incredibly treasured and an important part of Black and African-American cultural tradition, but also because storytelling changes lives, right? It changes individual lives, it changes the world, it changes community, especially changes the Black community in context of healthcare. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the different types of storytelling that we're likely doing throughout our career, or that we're going to be doing throughout our career. Me and Venicia are actually going to play a little bit. We're actually going to do a little bit of role-playing behavioral interviewing with you today. Please don't expect Viola Davis or Angela Bassett out of either one of us. You will get our best, but trust, you are not going to get Angela Bassett tonight. And then we're going to give you some interview tips and then open it up for questions. All right. So let's talk a little bit about storytelling, but let's talk about the overall story of Black healthcare leadership today. And again, for those of you who may not be able to see the screen, what this particular slide says is that 6% of our hospital chief executive officers identify as being Black, even though 14% of the US population identify as being Black. Interesting. Then we have the average percent of white healthcare board members. That number is 87%, even though 59% of our US population identifies as white, not Hispanic or Latino. Interesting. Now, some of you might be asking, Natasha, is it because we just simply don't have the talent? Is it because we're just not going to the schools? Are we just not interested in healthcare? Maybe we just don't have the bench. Nope. Association of University Programs and Health Administration says 44% of students in graduate healthcare programs identify as being a racial or ethnic minority, and 45% in undergraduate healthcare programs identify as being a racial or ethnic minority. So no matter how you cut it, the math ain't mathing, right? We can do better. This country can do better in terms of our representation of chief executive officers, and we can do better than 87% white healthcare board members. But that's not even the point, right? Because a lot of you probably already know these numbers, which is probably why you joined N.A.H.S.E in the first place, right? The point of me showing you this slide is for us to remember the odds. Because, and I'm claiming this for all of you, whoever, I don't even know how many people are in this room right now. Let's just say it's still 25 or more. But I am claiming for every single one of you that y'all are going to get the CEO spots. You're going to get the COO spots. You're going to get the CHRO spots. You're going to get the CDO spots. You're going to get all the spots. You're going to get the project management spots, the accountant spots, whatever spots you get. I am rooting for you. Everybody in this room is rooting for you. Why? Because we have too many rooms that you are not in. And just by you occupying that spot, it tells an incredible story without you even opening your mouth, just based on these numbers, right? So there's that. Now that we have that established, I want to talk a little bit about 3 healthcare leaders. I wanted to highlight 3 Black healthcare leaders, or at least 3 Black leaders who have had a powerful, enormous, everlasting impact on the health and wellness of communities in general. And in the interest of time, I'll probably only touch upon 1 or 2. So let's talk about James McCune Smith. So what really stood out to me about Dr. James McCune Smith's story is that he was the first African-American to earn a medical degree. However, James McCune Smith actually applied to 2 prestigious universities in America and was denied because he was Black. And so he was like, okay. So he actually connected with 2 co-conspirators or 2 supporters that actually funded his way through University of Glasgow in Scotland. You know what that tells me? The 2 takeaways that I got from his story is this, is that yes, America is your home, but so is Earth. Earth is your home. You are not bounded by the borders of this country. You can take your education, you can take your experience, you can take your skills, you can take all of that and you can go wherever the hell you want to go, right? You have no limitations whatsoever. I think the other thing that Dr. James McCune Smith's story tells me is that, and this is really, really important for Black folks to remember and other marginalized groups, is that there will always be spaces that are prepared to reject you. And in the same breath, there will always be spaces that are prepared to accept and embrace you. And those are the spaces where you should gravitate to. I promise you, you will have a better go of it if you do so. I really, really encourage you to also look at all 3 of these individual stories, because to be honest, I knew very little of them before I researched them, but The point of this is that nobody in this room is just Black, just white, just Latino, right? We have intersectionality on top of all that. We are Black and disabled. We are Black and gay. We are Black and immigrant. We are Black and the first to get our bachelor's degree, our master's degree, our medical degree, our PhD, right? We're Black and neurodivergent. We're Black and depressed. We're Black and anxious. We are Black in so many things. We are white in so many things. We are Latino in so many things. And it's so important for you to embrace the power of storytelling, not only to get in the door, because like I said, just your representation tells such a powerful and incredible story, but also because so you can be that figure, you can be that person that you always wanted to hear from before you got into this field, right? And so others can actually be inspired by your example. So I'm going to pause there before we go on to the next section. But Danielle, Venicia, is there anything going on in the chat? What's the chat looking like?
No, not yet. All good.
All good? All right. And if any of that resonated with you, I definitely want to see some hearts in the chat. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the types of stories that we tell, right? The story buffet. And as you all might notice, I love analogies, right? So hopefully y'all have had dinner or you at least have some yummy snacks nearby. But let's talk a little bit about the stories that we tell throughout our careers. So the tagline. The tagline is an important one because I'm pretty sure you all have walked through your favorite grocery store, Costco, Sam's, H-E-B, Kroger's, whatever, right? And what they usually do is they'll give you a sample. And that is strategic because what they want to do is they want to whet your appetite. They want you salivating. They want your mouth to water so you can make a beeline to that product and you can immediately buy it, right? It's the same thing with the tagline. If you have like maybe, if you're like me, sometimes you find yourself in Zoom meetings for like maybe 15, 20 minutes. You have very little time because you got to get straight to business. This is a really great statement, a really great, simple, sweet statement to introduce who you are, but you make it sticky, right? It's for like really limited time. Elevator speech is very similar, the same, except you got a little bit more time to put some seasoning on it, right? So maybe you are on your way to the elevator, you're waiting at the elevator, and you see somebody that you've been trying to connect with for a while. So it's pretty much the tagline, plus maybe something a little bit more specific. So you might say, I'm a project manager who does blank, but I've been working on this particular project or this particular program, something that is visible, something that is enticing, something that is intriguing, that lights people's fires or gets their antenna up, right? I think the biggest tip with these two that I want to encourage everybody to lean into is to be simple, right? One of the biggest barriers or challenges that I see with some of the way that we tell our stories, especially short stories, is that we try so hard to be pedantic and to be academic and to sound so smart that we lose the digestibility of it. We lose the relatability. So one big test on whether you have a really good tagline or a really good elevator speech is honestly say it to somebody that's outside of your field. If you say it to somebody that's outside of your field that has no idea what it is that you do and they can grasp accurately what you do within the first 15 seconds, that's a really good sign that you have a good tagline and elevator speech. And then we have the behavioral interview, which me and Venicia are going to actually talk about in a little bit, but we're actually going to role play in a little bit. But the behavioral interview is pretty much the standard interview for a lot of companies these days. And essentially, it matches the formula of any good story that you watched on Netflix, Hulu, Pluto, Tubi, whatever it is that you watch. It has the same formula. It has a background or a setting. It has a plot and it has a resolution. Same thing here. Whenever you're telling your story in an interview, you want to actually give the setting, give the larger context. You want to say what you did, and that you want to talk about the resolution. And obviously, you want the resolution to be successful. So before we get started, do we have anything? I do see something in the chat. Venicia, Danielle, anything going on in the chat that we should know about?
No, just some love.
Just some love? Okay, perfect. All right. Well, then without further ado, Miss Venicia, you ready to do our debut?
Yes, I'm ready. For those of you who don't know me, I'm N.A.H.S. I am the chair of our professional development committee. Thank you for those who I recently met and that I've invited. Thanks for those, the family and friends that are here with us. And I have to tell you, I do not like role play, but I knew that I was going to step outside of my comfort zone and show you what I have and let you know that if I can do it, you can do it too. And so this is not scripted. You know, we have a few questions. I think it's at least 4 or 5 that she's going to ask me, and let's just see how I do.
Yeah, and to that point, I definitely want y'all to give a round of applause, do the hand clap emoji for Venicia in the chat, because I can tell you that this is intimidating just with 2 people interviewing. So when you have 25, 30, 40 plus people watching, it is definitely commendable. So give her a hand. And like I said, and I must reiterate, do not expect Viola Davis or Angela Bassett from either one of us. All right, now that I've said that, all right, Venicia, 1, 2, 3. Hi, Venicia. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Awesome. Listen, I am really happy to connect with you today. I've been waiting to actually talk with you because I've heard about you throughout the company, but I haven't really had a chance to like really formally meet. So I'm really excited to finally connect. So what's going to happen is I'm just going to ask you a few questions to just learn a little bit more about you. And then I'll ask you a couple of scenario questions to learn a little bit more about how you think it works. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Well, let's just start with tell me about yourself. Like I know a little bit, but I would love to learn about Venicia through Venicia.
Yes. So I'm a seasoned administrative professional. I've been a part of the last 10 to 12 years, I've been supporting executive leadership, primarily in healthcare. I have a passion for improving processes and efficiency. The leaders that I've supported have appreciated my ability to build strong relationships and rapport. And I pride myself on being a good thought partner when it comes to strategy and leading effective teams.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that overview. It's really interesting because you've been in your role for quite a few years now. What's inspiring your career move at this time?
Well, recently I've invested in my professional development I've been enhancing my skills as a project manager. And as I make that transition, I really desire to work in a role where I can take the lead in a project. And this position looked to be a good alignment for that vision.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. All right, so I'm just going to ask you, again, one of those scenario questions so I get a better understanding of how you think and kind of how you work. So obviously, we're looking at a process. This is a process improvement role. And it's really, you know, it's really important that we have somebody in the role that's kind of an innovative thinker, and you know, because we've had some pretty outdated processes for quite some time, so we're looking to change some things up. Can you tell me about a scenario where you've introduced or implemented a new strategy or improved processes to better serve our customer or better serve the customer?
The first thing that's coming to mind is in my previous role, I worked as the senior EA to the CEO and project manager. Majority of my role was supporting the board management. So there was a board meeting that happened every quarter with our leaders and sometimes members of the network team. And we had a project plan. And when I started in the role, there was just an Excel spreadsheet that was just a lot of data, and it was not really organized. There was no way to track deadlines. So I took advantage of a platform that we had called Asana. Asana is a task management software where you could input the the deliverables and then assign those tasks to people. So I was able to improve our flow of communication, create deadlines, and actually assign things. And that was kind of a one-stop shop to where we can all keep up with documents and information. The team was really satisfied with the new structure. They expressed gratitude because the vision was clear and they were more prepared, and it didn't feel rushed. So I got good feedback from that.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Really good example. And the last question that I have for you, obviously relationships are huge here, right? And we're obviously building relationships with a lot of the clientele that we serve, our senior executive leadership. So I would love for you to share a scenario in which you cultivated relationships with key partners or stakeholders to achieve a business goal.
Yes. So I worked in community outreach for Baptist Women's Hospital. It was a grant funded position where we partnered with foundations, the clinical team, and the Breast Cancer Consortium. We were able to, I'm most proud of this position because it was a project that I was leading on my own. Well, I was the lead the lead coordinator for that role, but we were able to increase the events and health fairs participation. We sponsored over 150 events every year with our mobile mammography unit. So we were able to increase the mammography screenings in targeted areas by 50%. And I felt really accomplished because it was a goal that we had for the grant, and I had no idea how I was going to do it. I hadn't done that kind of work before, but I was able to help the consortium and as well as my team to make that progress.
All right. End scene. We're done. So while I'm going to actually ask Venetia a couple of follow-up questions. I'm going to actually stop sharing for a little bit so I can see y'all.
All right, give me 1 second.
The surprise here, though, is while I'm asking Venetia a couple of follow-up questions, you all are going to give her feedback. You're going to give her some feedback. You're going to think about what you heard that she did really well, and then you're going to give compassionate, constructive feedback on how she can improve, right? Because she's our friend and we don't necessarily want to hold her back from progress just because we're trying to be polite or courteous, right? Like Venetia can handle it. I know she can handle it because let me tell you something. Venetia and I actually did practice a little bit before we did this. She wasn't scripted, but we did go through it. Venetia, she knocked it out the park. I can already tell that that there's some things that she might have like tweaked and changed a little bit. So Venetia, let me ask you this. How was that experience for you?
It was good. Interviews are always really kind of nerve-wracking to me. So I've tried to remain calm, breathe through it, and not overthink it. I had a lot of practice because last year I had so many interviews. I was unemployed for about 5 months. So I had a lot of practice. I noticed a lot of the trends and the questions that come through. So I kind of have like a database in my mind of some of the challenging things. When I get the behavior questions, like give me those scenario questions, I usually have some scenarios just in the back of my mind that I can share. And depending on the question, I kind of pull from that archive to say, hey, this is mostly related to that question. So and then as the interviewer is talking, I kind of usually try to at least gather my thoughts of at least have an idea of how I'm gonna, relay that. One of the things that was shared with me most recently that I love was the BAR response. BAR stands for background, action, and result. So when you're asked a question, you kind of have to just say like, what's the background of this response? What was the action that you took, and what was the result? So that's kind of what I usually try to go for.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think you implemented last time from our practice session that you think was helpful? Because I did notice a little bit of a change. So you tell me.
I would say, the question about yourself always kind of trips me up a little bit. I usually don't know whether I want to go more personal or whether I want to just give a lot of background. But one of the things that I remember you saying was that try to give, as much of a job related response as you can, because you only have a short amount of time to show them that that you're capable of doing the job.
Perfecto. All right. So this is the part where we're going to ask y'all to come off mute and give Venetia, what specifically did she do well? Not necessarily just great job, because I see all the great jobs, because she did do a great job, but specifically, what did she do well? I see, sorry, Kalia, hopefully I'm saying that right. Kalia said in the chat she was confident and comfortable with her answers. I love the applicable examples. I would agree. She nailed, especially the behavioral interview question. She said something about 50% increase. I was like, oh, yes. Yes, Lord, I heard it. What else? What other things specifically did she do well?
I would say just the cadence of how she was speaking, because I know sometimes people can get a little nervous when it's an interview and tend to speak a little faster. But Venetia did a really great job just with her cadence and sounding very confident. I also like the fact that you had examples ready to go in the back of your mind, like a filing cabinet, where you can just pick and pull as examples. I thought that was very, very great.
That's right. She didn't hesitate for long. Thank you so much, Shannon. I appreciate that. I'm reading this stuff in the chat. She didn't hesitate for long periods. It flowed well and she was clear. She included specific metrics and percentages. That's a very powerful one, right? So I know that me and Venetia talked about that, about sticking the landing on the behavioral interview questions, which it's always, this is why it's also really, really important for you to have some sort of place where you put your measurable successes on the projects and stuff that you work on, right? Because I know sometimes, like, as you're working throughout the day, it could be hard to remember to record those things, but this is where it actually comes in handy. So you can say that we increased something by 50%, we reduced something by 50%, we grew something by 50%. Bye, Ebony, thank you. Let's see, she spoke very well and clearly. All right, let's go into, actually, I think we have like at least a minute or two for a couple more specific examples of what she did well. Is there anything else, anybody else want to come off mute with and say what they really liked about Venetia's strengths in that interview? No? Okay. Well, let's move to constructive. What would you recommend that Venetia consider in her next interview, or at least her next mock interview?
Any
and if you're
feedback?
talking, you're maybe talking on mute.
I'll go. This is Kalia. This is something that I struggle with. It's like you know what you want to say, but you say in between your sentences because you don't want to answer too fast or say the wrong thing because you're a little nervous. So just, I guess, practicing that.
Yeah, and I think, you know what? I think that also, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that comes with practice. I will also say that I think it's just a sign, I think it's also a sign of processing. And I think that also I think is reflective of the interviewer too, right? Like most interviewers are pretty compassionate, graceful folks. So to your point, you may not necessarily, you want to practice so that the examples roll off your tongue, but can promise y'all nobody's really sort of like counting ums and uhs and stuff like that. But that's a really good point. Keela says, same for me. I feel like my throat is closing up. This can be, that's why I asked Benicia, how did she feel, right? Because how you feel before an interview, how you feel during the interview, that's a very relevant thing, right? And so to your point, Kalia, practicing with a friend, practicing in the mirror, making sure you have your notes nearby, those things help. Those things help. And also recognizing that I think part of this is also just recognizing that there is no, that the power dynamic that we've created between interviewer and interviewee is made up. You're also interviewing them, right? So I think some part of it is that we do put a little bit of extra pressure on ourselves because we put the interviewer at a higher level, when ultimately all it is a conversation. And so all you're really doing is practicing a conversation between two equals. What else?
Yes.
Does anybody else have anything that they want to add in terms of what Benicia could consider or maybe improve for next time?
I have a specific thing that I want to add or add. Something I'm trying to get more comfortable with is articulating my words, being more clear in my communication. So I'm curious how you guys thought I verbalized the responses that I gave, because although I kind of know what I'm gonna say, like you said, sometimes it's processing and actually like putting my thoughts into words is something that I've struggled with in the past. So I'm curious how you guys thought I did with that.
And feel free to come off mute.
Hi, this is Tatiana. So I think you were very clear, very to the point. It was easy to understand everything that you were referring to, especially with me not having any experience in your previous roles and what your experience is. So it was very easy for me to comprehend it all, which I believe is very good, even for someone who would be on a higher level and would, of course, understand all of your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, and remember, the goal is not perfection here. You know, I think that's the other thing too that I want you all to remember is that, especially with Black and underrepresented leaders, I think the world puts a lot of pressure on us to be perfect. And so therefore we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be perfect. And that's just untenable, right? Ultimately, what you want to do is you want them to walk away with an accurate and powerful picture of who you are as a professional. That interview is never going to be perfect. What it will be is meaningful and hopefully informative both ways, right? Now, here's one thing I'll share with you as an area to consider, Benicia, is in the tell me about yourself question. I think you did rightfully focus on what you could gain from it. What I usually coach people to do is talk about why you're such a strong match for the role, right? Saying something along the lines of, this particular role, what I notice about this role is that it really demands your skills in relationship building and strategic planning, which I have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I've been able to bring to the table in spades. So I know that I will be able to be an asset to your department. And I know that it's something that I'm truly going to enjoy. And in turn, what I'm hoping to gain is development in these areas, right? Does it make sense?
Right.
Okay. All right. I'm going to share my screen again so we can talk about some interview tips, and then we'll open it up to some questions. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I'll go over these real quick. The interview tee. Number 1, informational interviews. It is so important. Did y'all see the Cat Williams interview? Just do a thumbs up, say yes. Am I getting a lot of yeses in the chat, Benicia, Danielle?
a couple thumbs up.
Couple thumbs up. Okay, well, maybe some of y'all don't want to cop
Yes,
to it.
yes,
I
it's
saw the
in
Cat
check.
Williams interview.
Yes.
And let me tell you something. Y'all want to find the Cat Williams of every company. You hear me? You want to go and figure out who is the sacred snitch of every company that you're about to apply to. Because the truth of it is that some of us are jumping into these companies, going off of the job description. And let's just be clear, people are being paid thousands of dollars to create magical job descriptions. That is their job. If a job description sounds enticing, it's just simply because somebody's doing their job. What you want to do is you want to get in the corners and you want to go in the dark corners and closets of this company and find out what are they really like. So you want to leverage your LinkedIn network, you want to leverage your friends, you want to leverage your alumni network and be like, look, tell me the truth. Are they promoting Black folks in that organization? What does diversity really look like? What is the leadership style? How do they give feedback, right? What do they do when people make mistakes around here? You know what I'm saying? What is the culture like? How do they deal with difficult employees? You want to ask everything before you go into this interview and before you get yourself into a position or a role that you do not like. That's essentially what this particular slide is. Interview T number 2 or core number 2. I think the biggest bullet point that I want to point out here is honestly all of them. If you really want me to tell you the truth, a lot of people, even though we say tailor your resume, a lot of people still don't tailor their resume. So for instance, what I see is people will have a resume and they'll be going after something like a health equity role, right? But the top 3 keywords in health equity that they're using for those job descriptions are not in the resume. And no matter whether a computer is reading your resume or whether it's a person reading your resume, you want to speak in their language, right? You would not go to someone who speaks predominantly Chinese and speak to them in German. That is ultimately what you're doing when you are not tailoring your resume to a meticulous degree. And then the biggest thing is, like I said, when I talk about get more tea or do the informational interviews, also try to approach the leader. You know, there's a lot of leaders that are willing to take your call before you even apply or before you even interview, just so you can understand, like, what are the high stakes of this role? Like, why are you even opening this position? Why is it even a priority, right? So understanding from not only that leader, but people that work with that leader, like, what is keeping this person up at night? What do they ultimately want to achieve at the end of the year, right? Because that will tell you how they're going to measure your success. And frankly, if that's the way that you want to be measured. Because again, this is a two-way street. You have to decide if you even want this job. And then I think the biggest thing is ask for help, right? Like, I think a lot of us sometimes, especially in our communities, we're not, there's pride involved, there's vulnerability involved. Sometimes we feel a little intrepid about reaching out to our network and saying, hey, I need a little bit of help. I could use a little bit of information. I'd love to know if you know somebody at United Health. I'd love to know if you know somebody at Cigna. I'd love to know if you know somebody at Humana. Use your network. Most of the time, people are happy to help, especially when it's something that's simple. And then the last one, again, for the 50th time, you are also interviewing these folks. They are not better than you. They are not more superior. You also need to know who it is that you're going to work with so you understand if they are also matching your worth, right? So I'm like, they ask you behavioral interview questions, ask them behavioral interview questions. I'd like to know when you've had, I actually just added this last one after me and a friend were talking about a workplace bullying situation. I said, we should add that to the interview. Share a scenario where you led a team that was functionally thriving and the morale was struggling or failing. Because sometimes what you'll find is that a company will have people on their teams that are functionally hitting the numbers out the park, but the way they treat their people are trash. And so what you want to understand is, does that leader care enough about the culture of that team to intervene when necessary? If that's something that's important to you, right? Or tell me about a time where you strongly disagree with a direct report on a particular issue or plan of action. How did you handle that? There's some leaders that do not want you agreeing with them. This is a really good question to understand. How do you deal with difference of opinion, especially strong difference of opinion? Let's see. And then I think the third one is something that I always really like. Like, it's just a really subtle question to understand. Again, what type of person does this person work really well with? And it's frankly, it's effective and yet very effectively sneaky at the same time. Like, it's one of those questions where, you know, most people don't really understand the underlying purpose of it. Does it make sense? Like, sometimes you don't want your questions to be so obvious that they're on guard and they're scared to answer. Like, you want to provide some sort of approachability to your question. So anyway, those are just some examples. And of course, you will get this deck, so you can take any one of these that you like. And we're going to go into questions, of course. But before I do, I want to just remind everybody, again, I'm the founder and CEO of Natasha Wade, your Black Woman Soul Coach. I would love for you to reach out to me. Definitely stay in touch, because I will actually be coming out with a group coaching experience for Black women soon. So especially if you're someone who identifies as a Black woman and you're interested in being a part of a group coaching experience, I would love to hear from you. Okay, without further ado, let's open it up for some general questions. Or thoughts or comments or concerns.
Hi, good evening. Thank you guys so much for hosting this. This has been very informative and very helpful, and I'm looking forward to interviewing again because of it. So you mentioned kind of when you're stating kind of taking it into what it is that you would be able to do for their company. Is there a certain kind of, like, essentially, are you doing that too much? Like, is there a point in which should you always try and move it into what it is that you would be doing in their company, or should you more so try and keep it how Venetia did, which was amazing. Also, you did very well. That's
Yeah, I think
essentially
it's both. I think it's both in brief, right? So I'm always a fan of doing both, because ultimately, let's just be clear, when somebody opens up a position, they are very much interested in what you can do for the company, right? And so you want to make their job easy. And they want you, and frankly, they're rooting for you. So they want to hear very easily, what is it? Why should I really choose you out of the 25, 50 people or whatever, at least the 4 or 5 people that I'm interviewing? And they don't want that position open longer than it needs to be. So, like, I just say, make it easier for them and tell them what specifically is it that you're going to bring to the table. And then, yes, also, it's equally important for you to tell them how it is that you are wanting to grow, right? Whether that's you want to build a skill, whether that's because you want to be a part of a particular culture, whether that's because you're moving into a different space and you just want to learn that space more, whatever that is. Does that help, Leah?
It does. I think I was more so kind of mentioning in her interview, in her responses, she was speaking about previous, like, accomplishments, and she put the metrics in there. It was amazing. And you then followed up by stating that she didn't really talk about what it is that specifically what it is that the company would want. So I was kind of more so asking if we should do more so of what you suggested rather than what she did by highlighting her accomplishments within the previous companies, or if it, again, as you stated, should be a balance.
Oh, okay. Let me clarify. my feedback to her was specifically in the context of when they ask you the question of, tell me why you're interested in this position or why you're exploring a new role. When they ask you specifically that question, my recommendation is to make it balanced by sharing first, and this is just my recommendation, sharing first what it is that you are bringing to the table, what it is that you're going to do for the company that is a good match, that will make you an asset, and then following up with how you would like to be developed. The way she answered, the way she answered her behavioral questions was frankly nearly perfect to me. Like she definitely, she did, you know, what makes sense, which is basically the most important thing is to talk about the success of it, which she landed. And she did that in a very dynamic way. But I was specifically talking about that question. Does that make sense?
Yes, got it. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I had a quick question. First, thank you so much for this session. This has been really helpful. And I also like, Benicia, that you mentioned the bar method. Sometimes I get lost with the STAR method, but I think bar kind of just simplified it for me when answering your question. But also something that I've noticed, especially being a little bit earlier in a career, a question that we get asked a lot is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? How would you answer that question? I think I get kind of lost in my answer, so I don't know how I should approach answering that question.
That's a good question. Oh, sorry. I think somebody else was going to jump in.
No, I was just saying it was a great question.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things, a couple of ways that you can approach it, right? So one, you could just honestly just be authentic and simply say, you know, honestly, I'm looking to explore that. What I do know is that I want to be of service, and you know, I want to be of service. I want to be able to serve the wider public in a very meaningful way. However, I'm still finding out specifically what that means. And so because XYZ company has so many different opportunities and so many, and they have their hands in so many different segments, and there's so many different options and avenues I can take. Right now, this feels like the most accessible and the one that feels most aligned with my skills as I explore, something like that. Does that help?
Yeah, that's really helpful. I was trying to write that down while you're saying it, but yeah, that was helpful. I think leaning towards keeping it broad is definitely a lot more. I think it's just very, very helpful to just keep it broad versus being very specific in what I want to do, because I don't know what I want to do technically.
And that's
yet.
perfectly. And let me tell you something. And this is exactly why you want to pay attention to the interviewer and how they're going to respond, right? Because it's perfectly reasonable for somebody, especially early in their career, to simply say, look, I don't know. And I'm actually kind of hoping, and here's another thing that you could tag on there, you know, one of the reasons that I would love to join this team is that I am looking for a mentor to help me in that exploration, right? So it's totally reasonable and understandable for you to have that response. And you want to pay attention to how the interviewer responds. If the interviewer seems visibly or audibly weirded out by that answer, that's probably a good sign that you probably don't want to be there. And they're probably not set up to be like the type of mentor that you're looking for anyway. I think the other thing is just honestly gravitating towards what you do also want to do. You could throw in there that, look, I know that I want to be in healthcare. I'm just not necessarily sure what avenue in healthcare that I would like to pursue, but healthcare is my passion because blah, 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 whatever blah, 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 blah is. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does. Thank you.
You're welcome. I know we have 5 minutes now, so let me see where we're at in our schedule. Actually, we're right on time. I think we have maybe like a couple minutes for one more question. Do we, Kiara and Benicia?
Yeah, we can take one more.
Okay. Does anybody have one more question?
There is one in the chat. How do you tackle imposter syndrome before interviewing and applying for jobs? And I think it's from Keela. I may be saying her name wrong.
No, that's Keela. I know, yeah. Repeat her question again.
How do you tackle imposter syndrome before interviewing / applying for the job?
Okay. Let me just put this out here. This is probably another conversation for another time. When it comes to Black folks and imposter syndrome, there are plenty of people that are disputing that concept just because imposter syndrome is basically based off this concept that that you're a very accomplished person that doesn't always feel like you belong somewhere where you belong. But let's just be honest, for marginalized folks, there's actual proof and behavior that tells us that we don't belong. So let me just put that out there for consideration. But let's just say that you're having a confidence conundrum. I think the biggest thing to remember is that, well, and this is a very tough question because confidence conundrums can come from a number of places, but there's a couple of different things. One, to make sure that you have the right support system surrounding you, right? Make sure you have the right therapists, make sure that you have coaches, make sure that you have mentors, make sure that you have sponsors, especially make sure that you have a good therapist. Here's why. A lot of the confidence conundrums that a lot of us deal with and face with, to be honest, sometimes comes from trauma, sometimes comes from childhood experiences and upbringings that we haven't necessarily addressed, right? And then outside of that, I think it's just a matter of remembering that we have strengths and we are worthy even outside of our jobs. We are worthy just by existing. Every single one of us has magic. Every single one of us is powerful. Whether we're in this field or not, whether we have a job or not. And I think the issue is that we forget sometimes that we were born into a system and into a society that constantly keeps telling us that we have to prove and that we have to give evidence that we are worthy and deserving. And that is a whole ass lie. So that is I wish I could give you a simpler answer, Keela, but the truth of it is that it's a multi-layered issue. So I would say, like I said, arm yourself with a good therapist. Look, I'm fixing to set up my therapy appointment like real quick this week. Make sure that you have a good affirming group of people around you, and make sure that you understand that these confidence conundrums didn't come from somewhere. You were trained to always question your worth and to always question your skills and the talents, the many talents that you bring to the table. And on that note, I'm going to shut up and pass it over to Kiara and everybody else from N.A.H.S.E. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you, Natasha. I'll go ahead and pass it over to our professional development chair, Venicia. She's gonna go ahead and close us out.
Yeah, so once again, I want to thank you all for joining. Please don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, on Instagram. I plugged in Natasha's LinkedIn in the chat. The survey link is also included. This is an amazing organization that that you too can be a part of. There will be some other events that will be coming up. I will have a professional development event at least once a quarter throughout the rest of the year. So just stay tuned. Stay tuned for more. Am I missing anything? Anything else you can think? Oh, and also, we're doing a membership drive, and you'll get some information about that as well via email. Thank you. Thank you.